Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Mark Manning, coming to you from Glenwood Lutheran Church here on a muggy and warm June afternoon. As we gather together, I want to read to you from our first lesson for this coming Sunday, Hosea chapter 5. Hosea is voicing for God. He's speaking for God when he says this: I will return again to my place. He says, as a message from God, until they, the people of Israel and Judah and Ephraim, until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. In their distress, they will beg my favor. Well, then later on, Hosea quotes God again. What will I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? These are two nations that have fallen away. Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. Therefore, I have hewn them, these nations, by the prophets. I've killed them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. Here ends our reading. Readings like this are troubling often for people as they hear them. It's always been that way for Christians as they try to understand how God works in Jesus Christ and try to reconcile it with what they hear in the Old Testament. This has always been the case. During an early time of the church, there was a leader named Marcion. Marcion believed and taught others, and people some agreed with him that the God of the Old Testament was a different kind of God than the God of the New Testament and Jesus Christ. The God of the Old Testament was judging, to be feared, was judging, angry, was bent on the destruction of people who did not live up to the standards put forth. And that the God of the New Testament and Jesus Christ was about goodness and about love. And we'll often hear about how loving Jesus, how good he is, and that's the kind of God. And they said that these are really two different kinds of gods. And they could talk about that one way or the other. They would say, well, this is an old God, and then we have a new God. Or this is a God of heaven, and this is a God of Jesus with us. But the church said, no, this is not the case. And they, of course, they condemned Marcion for teaching these things. But rather, this is the mystery of God. And this is what we live with too. The mystery of seeing and hearing from a God who in love still needs nonetheless to judge his people, bring about to bring about consequences to their sin, and holding that intention with the God that we know in Jesus Christ, who also suffers death and is buried and is raised, and also pronounces some hard things upon people, as well as we also hear in the writings of Paul and others. So we live with that tension, and we must always be certain that what is not driving us, and Pastor Krista is so good at speaking to this based on some of the learning that she's received, and her growing up in a Jewish community of people in Minneapolis, and that is that we need to be sure that we don't assign this Old Testament God of judgment and make it a Jewish God. And it'll allow us then to not only judge that God, but also judge then people who ascribe to Judaism and some of the laws and such of Judaism. We can't make our prejudices and assign them to God and dismiss these and dismiss our labors. For Paul says that God does not give up on the covenant that he set forth in Abraham with all the people of Israel. In the same way, he doesn't give up on us. Good news to all.